Welcome to the Books of Titans podcast, hosted by Eric Rostad. Join him on his 15-year journey through the immortal books. He'll share what he's learning, explore profound ideas across time and cultures, and share the one thing he always hopes to remember from each immortal book.
Well, I've just spent the first 2 months of this year reading straight through the Bible. I started on the first day of the year, January 1st, started on Genesis 1 and read through the end of Revelation, and I actually finished on the morning of the last day of February 28th. And so my goal each year is to do that. This is my fifth year doing this, where I start off the year reading straight through the Bible within 2 months. This year, I'd hoped to include the Apocrypha in the reading, and I just got busy and ran out of time to where I did not include the Apocrypha. So maybe next year, I enjoy the Apocrypha and I try to include it every other year, but I just ran out of time and had to drop it for this year. So what I want to do in this episode is take a look back over the past 2 months and over this straight read through of the Bible and just share some of the things that stuck out this year. And these are things that kind of stuck out throughout the Bible this year, not just kind of one part of it, but it are ideas and things that I tracked throughout the Bible. I find each year that my mind just kind of naturally goes to something new. I kind of fixate on something that I perhaps didn't notice before or just didn't pay as much attention to, and then I just kind of track that throughout the Bible. And it makes it really exciting and really fun to read because each year there's something kind of new that sticks out. So if you're wondering why I do this, like why would you want to read the Bible straight through every year? And for me, this reading project really centers around the Bible in many ways. I'm seeking connections between the Bible and other literature. And so there are a number of books that reference the Bible, everything from Moby Dick to Blood Meridian to even a newer book like Theo of Golden. You just see biblical references throughout these books. But what's been really neat as I've started reading the immortal books is to see books written before the Bible possibly influencing the writers of the Bible, or the writers of the Bible kind of referencing these works to comment on them, to give another take on them, in that sort of thing. And so just as an example, this morning I was reading about the early Greek philosopher Heraclitus, and he speaks often about the Logos. And if you're familiar with the Gospel of John, the very first chapter is, in the beginning was the Word, but that translation is of the word Logos. And so here you've got Heraclitus writing quite a bit about the Logos, and then perhaps John is alluding to that, or in some way kind of tying that in to that beautiful beginning of the Gospel of John. And then there are other parts of the New Testament that may be references to Heraclitus or similar to things that he said as well. But then there's also these references to earlier works like the Babylonian creation myth and the Epic of Gilgamesh. And this is all so exciting for me because I get a kick out of that. I really enjoy seeing where the Bible is referenced in later work, but now being able to see earlier work and see the interaction with the Bible on that is so much fun. So I just want to have the Bible at the forefront of my mind each year. I'm a Christian as well, so I always want to have the scripture in my mind. And I have found that reading it in a relatively short period of time, just straight through, is the best method for me. In the past, I would try to read the Bible throughout the year, but if you read like 4 or 5 chapters a day, you can get through the Bible in a year. So there's these different plans, but they skip around the Bible, and it's hard to grasp the entire Bible when you're doing that. And I found that I would end up taking a lot of things out of context because I'm skipping around. I'm not reading things in their context. So like I would just be reading a chapter in the morning, but not really have an idea of how that fit into the bigger picture. But when you just start at the beginning of the Bible and read straight through, within a short period of time, I remember more just because it's more of a compact time period. And then two, you just start seeing these connection points a lot easier than if the time is spread out longer. So for that reason, I've decided to do this for the rest of my life. And I can tell you that this is my fifth time doing it. It gets better every year. And this year was no exception. Things stuck out. The whole thing, I would just really enjoyed it. I mean, I would wake up in the morning. I was excited about doing this. I would spend like an hour and a half reading and just thoroughly enjoy it. So if you've never done it, please give it a try. It just gets better every time. So this year I used two different Bibles. I used the Intertextual Tanakh to start things off. And the Intertextual Tanakh contained the books of Moses. So those are the 5 books of Moses, and then the early prophets. Then I switched to the Bibliotheca version of the Bible. And this was actually the version that I read in 2023. And I loved it. It's this beautiful set. The Bible is divided up into 5 different volumes. And so I read 3 of those volumes this year because one of the volumes was the 5 books of Moses and the former prophets, just like the Intertextual Tanakh that I used. So I skipped, or since I'd read that, I didn't read that first one, but then with Bibliotheca, I started in with the latter prophets, and then the next volume is the writings. I skipped the Apocrypha, and then I went to the New Testament. And the Bibliotheca is like the polar opposite of the Intertextual Tanakh. The Intertextual Tanakh, you open it up, and there is English on the right, Hebrew on the left, and then on each page, on the far side of the page, there is a column of commentary. And this was delightful. The commentary was incredible. It actually took me a long time to get through it because I was so interested in the commentary. And so, but that's the only version that they have so far is the 5 books of Moses and the former prophets. I think they're working on the latter prophets next and then the writings. So those will eventually come out, and I look forward to getting those, just if nothing else, for the commentary. So yeah, those are the versions I used. The Bibliotheca does not have chapter references, verse references. It's just like reading a novel. There's no commentary. So just the polar opposite, but I love each version. I really enjoy commentary. It's hard to get through the Bible in 2 months if I'm reading a lot of the commentary. So it's almost helpful just to have the text and just to interact with that. But I do love a good commentary as well. But the cleanliness of the Bibliotheca is really something special. And it's probably my favorite version of the Bible that I own. Overall, it took me 80 hours and 54 minutes to read through the Bible. I do track that every time I sit down. I start the app that I use. I'm just curious as to how long it takes. The first year I read through the Bible, it took me 104 hours to read through it. So this year was a little shorter there on the 80 hours. I mean, that's including time taking notes and all sorts of stuff like that. So in terms of my process of reading, while I'm reading, I'm taking extensive notes, and I'm making notes in the margin. I'm underlining, I'm writing in the back of each of the Bibles. And with the Bibliotheca version this year, I used a different color pen just so I could distinguish between what I underlined in the 2023 reading, where I used a black pen. This year I used a blue pen, and then even notes in the back, I would take the notes in a blue pen just to distinguish. And it's just kind of fun to see what stuck out 3 years ago as opposed to this year. But the other cool thing about writing in the margins, what I do a lot is write questions, and I just have a ton of questions as I'm reading through the Bible. And so I love making notes of those questions. I'm more apt to remember the question if I write it down. And then what I really love is if the question gets answered later on in the Bible. But just as a good practice, I love writing these questions in the margin. And someone recently asked me, what do I do for the rest of the year? So if I'm reading through the Bible the first 2 months, do I just not read it at all the rest of the year? Do I read parts of it? And so what I end up doing is before I start reading other works in the morning, I will try to read like a proverb. And there's 31 proverbs. So for most months, it's just, I'll pick the day of the if it's March 15th, I will pick Proverbs 15 for that day and read that. That's what I actually do. What I would ideally like to do is just to take a little time each morning and look at those questions that I wrote through the reading that I had for that year. I think that would be a fun thing to do. And maybe I'd look up that question somewhere else or try to find the answer within the Bible or something like that. But yeah, that practice of writing questions in the margin is very helpful. So in this episode, what I want to do is just share a few things that stuck out across the entire Bible this year. And these are not in any particular order, but these are just some of the things that stuck out. One was just the Exodus and personifying that. And it may sound selfish to be thinking about it in that sense, but I've heard a lot of people say that over my lifetime of like, relating my life to when the Israelites left Egypt and, went through the Red Sea and there were 40 years in the wilderness and all that. And, I had my wilderness time and I've heard that my whole life, but I've never thought that myself. But this year, just I really connected with that, with the Exodus story and just thinking about it in terms of my own life and in different parts of my life. And that was kind of a neat thing, as it's just never happened before. Another idea that I saw throughout the Bible, and I would say this is probably one of the biggest ideas from the reading this year, is just the individual versus the society, or the prevailing culture. And what really stuck out to me is, especially like in the book of Kings, where you have a direction that the kingdom of Israel or the kingdom of Judah was going. And for each king, it would say they were a good king or they were a bad king. Judah had a mix of good and bad kings. All the kings of Israel were bad. And it started out bad. The first king of Israel made some golden calves and they worshiped them. And it would always reference that first king, like this king did as the first king did. And I just kept thinking, like, were there any individuals who didn't go that way? Because you know the direction of where things are heading, and it's not a good direction. Like the whole society is going to where they're going to be exiled by the Assyrians. Like they're going to be attacked by the Assyrians because of what they're doing. And are there any individuals that are standing up and doing something different than what the kings are doing or what the prevailing culture is doing? And what you see overall, or many times, is that no, people aren't going the opposite way. And there are a few examples, and that's a really neat part of the Bible where you might have like Ruth or Job or the prophets, and they're going the opposite way of the prevailing culture, and they're telling people to do the same, to go against the culture. And you do have other indications where God tells different people, like, I've got this many people in this town who follow me. And so there are like little indications, but just this idea of kind of like an overall, we get to see the direction of history in these books of the Bible. And if everything is going this one direction, what does it look like for an individual to not go that direction? And we see writings of how to do that, but just examples are few and far between. So that's something that really stuck out to me this year, and tied with that is just the importance of leadership and in the direction that leadership sets. It seems like a lot of people end up doing what the leadership does in these cases. Another idea that stuck out was just reading about the law, and you see the law praised so much in the Psalms. You're reading the law in Deuteronomy and in different parts of the books of Moses. And what really stuck out to me this year was just the things are moving toward heaven, and God lives in the heavens, and the law is almost it's part of it's like an indication of how things are in heaven, and just to love the law or to obey the law is moving in that direction of how things are in heaven. And I guess the way that helped me think of this the best is just to contrast it with like the Greek gods. There is no connection like that with the Greek god. The Greek gods are doing the same as what people are doing. Like, you're not looking up to the Greek gods for behavior or how you should live. And that idea that the law is these are how things are in the heavens. It was amazing. And I think this ties in with another idea from this year. And this is something that sticks out every year. It's just how much the God you're reading about in the Bible is a God of love. And if you just take a step back to think about that, like, would that be your initial thought of what a God would be like? I mean, you look at the Greek gods. You don't get the idea like they're gods of love. There might be a God of love, but like, these are not loving gods. But the God of the Bible you're reading about is one that cares about the downtrodden and the orphan and the widow, and a strong emphasis to care for these people. It's just, it always amazes me, but it kind of ties in with the law and what we're commanded to do, in how that is a picture of how things are in heaven or the heavens. So that's another idea that stuck out. Another big one was just the idea of scattering. So the people of Israel, the people of Judah, they are scattered. They are taken over. They're scattered abroad. Some of them return to Judah, but there's this idea of the people of God being scattered. But it's not just there. It's not just the Old Testament. They're also in the New Testament, especially like in the book of Acts, when persecution arises for these new group of Christians. They are scattered, and they are scattered to many like Greek areas and Roman areas, and they end up spreading the gospel message to these new areas. But part of that was just based off persecution. And so you're seeing scattering happening in the Old Testament. You're seeing scattering happening in the New Testament. And then there was a note, Deuteronomy 30 really stuck out to me this year in the reading. And there was a note in that Intertextual Tanakh that talked about scattering. So I want to read that. Israel are humanity in microcosm. Just as Moses must come to embody Israel to be their preeminent leader, so too Israel must become like humanity as a whole in order to lead humanity back to unity with God. Thus, like humanity itself, who were scattered from Babel, Israel must be the scattered within the scattered, so their unscattering can precipitate their leading of humanity back to unity. I thought that was quite interesting. Another thing I tracked this year was any mention of angels or cherubs. Our pastor, like a few months ago, had said that if you read about angels in the Bible, they don't have wings, and that kind of shocked me, because every picture you see of an angel, they have wings. But cherubs, they do have wings, and cherubs have multiple faces. Cherubs are what are on the top of the Ark of the Covenant with those wings kind of spanning. There's one on each side. When you're reading about King Solomon, he puts cherubs all over the temple. And it was just interesting to kind of note who are the angels that show up. Sometimes they're named, and then you can see, oh, the same angel appeared to this person as appeared to this person. And then Michael's the archangel, and you kind of you start noticing these different connection points of the angels. But yeah, it was just something like anytime I came across an angel, I would underline them and kind of make a note of if they were named and that sort of thing. So that was kind of fun to do this year. My favorite books were Deuteronomy and Ecclesiastes. Every year when I'm reading the Bible, there's obviously current events going on and different things. And so this year was just interesting, especially with like the Epstein files and things like that. And just, I just kind of wondered, like, will justice ever come for those things. And here, as I'm reading through the Bible, and you see this throughout, there's this strong idea that everything will be uncovered, like nothing will remain hidden. And I don't know if that just means in eternity or here and now, but that was sort of a comfort, just in a disgust, but just wanting there to be where stuff comes out and it's revealed and it's not hidden anymore, and a frustration that things still are hidden, and yet over and over in the Bible you see that things will be revealed. The other interesting thing was just I finished reading the book of Revelation. Well, I finished the whole Bible on February 28th. So it's the last day of February. I just woke up, I brewed coffee, and I started reading. And that morning I read the entire book of Revelation. And then when I finished the Bible, I got on online. I opened up Twitter to share, I finished the Bible. And then I look and I see all the news about Iran and the bombing there and stuff. And it was just so interesting, just after having finished Revelation and then going to the news and seeing all that. So yeah, just it's always interesting to be reading the Bible with all that's going on in the world. I find that starting the year with it just is such a good way to just kind of frame the year as well. The other thing reading the Bible does and starting with it for the year is that it makes all the other books for the rest of the year seem quite short in comparison. So that's one other benefit. So yeah, that's my episode for the entire Bible this year. As I mentioned earlier, it's something that just gets better each year. I look forward to it. It takes a long time. It takes 2 months, 80 hours of reading, but it is so worth it. And it's just something that I look forward to each year. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for listening. I'd love to hear from you if you have done something similar, if you've read straight through the Bible and maybe some things that you got out of that. You can follow Books of Titans on Instagram or Twitter, just at Books of Titans, and check out the website as well. Have a lot of resources and reviews and all sorts of fun stuff there. I will be back next week, and what I'm going to do next year, so I'm back reading the Immortal Books, and the time frame portion that I'm in for the Immortal Books is early Greek philosophy. So I'm reading the philosophers before Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, and I had started Plato, and I realized that Plato was referencing these earlier philosophers, and so I wanted to get to know them. And so what I've decided to do, I got 4 or 5 books now just on these early Greek philosophers, and many of them talk about the same philosopher, but they will reference maybe different things, or there's a different introduction about them. I'm gonna start doing episodes about these philosophers. So instead of talking about the books, I want to do episodes about the philosophers. So the first philosopher I'll cover is Heraclitus, and he lived around 500 BC. And so I believe my next episode will be about him, his sayings, who his contemporaries were, when he lived, where he lived, all of that kind of fun stuff. And then I'll have those episodes for when I go back to Plato, and then I'll know, oh, okay, Plato is referencing Heraclitus. Here's what Plato says about Heraclitus. I think that'll just be a help for you just to get to know these earlier philosophers, and then also for myself, just to be able to reference these and kind of remember, oh yeah, this is what Heraclitus thought and believed. So that'll be coming up. I'll go through a number of the early Greek philosophers. Until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep listening. I'm out.